The day my father's will was read, I wore his favorite sweater. It still smelled like his cologne, a scent that had always meant safety and home. I never imagined it would become the armor I'd wear on the day my sister destroyed our family. I'm Caitlin, and this is the story of how betrayal became my stepping stone to success. Is this some kind of joke? I gripped the edge of the mahogany conference table, staring at the lawyer across from me. The document in front of me couldn't be real. There must be a mistake. I assure you, Ms. O'Brien, everything is in order. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, his expression carefully neutral. Your father's entire estate, including the family business, has been left to your sister Valerie. I turned to look at Valerie, who sat beside me with a practiced look of sympathy on her face. The same face she'd worn at Dad's funeral 3 days ago. Val, you knew about this? My voice cracked. Did you know all along? She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Katie, Daddy just wanted what was best for the family business. You know how impulsive you can be with money. Impulsive? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. I worked alongside Dad every day for the past 5 years while you were off finding yourself in Europe. Please, let's keep this civil. The lawyer interjected, but I barely heard him. Tell them about the conversation we had last Christmas, I demanded, my hands shaking. Tell them how Dad promised we'd run the company together. Valerie's face hardened slightly. People change their minds, Katie. Daddy changed his in the end. He knew I had the better head for business. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the sterile conference room. The better head for business? You haven't worked a day in your life. That's enough. Valerie stood, smoothing her designer dress. I know you're upset, but this is what Daddy wanted. I'm sure we can find you a position in the company somewhere. Maybe in HR? The condescension in her voice made my blood boil. This was the same sister who used to braid my hair and share her ice cream with me on hot summer days. Now she stood before me, a stranger wearing familiar skin. I don't want your charity, I spat, gathering my things. Keep it all. Keep every last penny. As I reached the door, Valerie called out, Don't be dramatic, Katie. Where are you even going to go? I turned back one last time, meeting her eyes. Watch me, Val. Just watch me. Outside, the autumn air hit my face like a slap. I made it halfway to my car before my legs gave out, and I slumped against a nearby tree. My phone buzzed, a message from Layla. How did it go? Want me to come over? I typed back quickly. Meet me at Adrian's office instead. I need to talk to him. 20 minutes later, I sat in Adrian's modest consulting firm, pouring out the whole story. He listened quietly, his years of experience evident in his thoughtful expression. So what now? He asked when I finished. What's your next move? I don't know, I admitted, wiping away angry tears. I always thought family meant something. That blood was thicker than water. It is. Adrian leaned forward, his eyes intense. But sometimes it's also more poisonous. The question isn't what Valerie did, it's what you're going to do about it. I want to prove her wrong, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I want to show her that I'm not just the impulsive little sister who needs looking after. Adrian smiled, reaching for his laptop. Then let's make a plan. I've been watching you work with your father's company for years, Caitlin. You have instincts that can't be taught. But I have nothing, I protested. No capital, no connections. You have me, he interrupted. And you have something more valuable than money. You have motivation. Sometimes the best businesses are built not from opportunity, but from necessity. As Adrian pulled up a blank business plan template, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and bleeding, but alongside it grew something else. Determination. One day, I promised myself silently, Valerie's going to realize what she threw away. And when that day comes, I'll be ready. I pulled Dad's sweater tighter around me, inhaling that familiar scent one last time. Then I straightened my shoulders and turned to Adrian's screen. Okay, I said. Let's begin. 6 months of rejection letters had taught me one thing. Starting over is a special kind of hell. I sat in my tiny rented office space, staring at yet another thanks but no thanks email when Layla burst through the door. "You need to see this." She thrust her phone in my face, nearly knocking over my coffee. It was an article about Valerie's latest business acquisition, a luxury yacht charter company in Miami. The photo showed her smiling on deck, champagne in hand, wearing what looked like half my old yearly salary on her wrist. "Delete it," I said, turning back to my laptop. "I don't need the distraction." "You're right." Layla flopped into the chair across from me. "So what's the plan for today, boss?" I pulled up my presentation slides. "Meeting with potential investors at 2. If I can just get one of them to believe in this concept." "They will," she assured me. "Your sustainable packaging idea is brilliant. Those big corporations are destroying the planet, and you're offering them a solution that actually saves them money." The phone rang, making us both jump. It was Adrian. "Caitlin, are you sitting down?" His voice crackled through the speaker. "Why? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Remember that contact I mentioned? The one from the venture capital firm? He wants to meet. Today." My heart skipped. "Today? Adrian, I'm not ready. My presentation still needs work and—" "Stop," he cut in. "You've been ready for months. Get your materials together and meet me at the Capitol Grill in an hour." I hung up and looked at Layla in panic. "Help me?" For the next 45 minutes, we rehearsed my pitch until I could recite it in my sleep. As I gathered my things, Layla grabbed my arm. "Wait." She pulled out her lipstick. "War paint. You've got this." The restaurant was packed with lunch crowds when I arrived. Adrian waved me over to a corner table where he sat with a distinguished-looking man in his 50s. "Caitlin, meet Robert. Robert, this is the young entrepreneur I told you about." Robert's handshake was firm. "Adrian says you're going to revolutionize industrial packaging." "That's the plan." I smiled, forcing confidence into my voice. "Did you know that current packaging methods waste approximately 40% of materials during production?" For the next hour, I laid out my vision. Robert asked tough questions, but I had answers ready. All those months of preparation were finally paying off. "Impressive," he said finally, setting down his coffee. "But tell me, why this? Why packaging of all things?" I thought about lying, about giving some corporate-friendly answer. Instead, I told the truth. Because I watched my father's company waste millions on inefficient systems, and nobody would listen when I proposed changes. Now I have a chance to fix that. Not just for one company, but for an entire industry. Robert nodded slowly. "And your father's company? They're not interested?" "They're under different management now." I met his gaze steadily. "But I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here because I know this idea works, and I'm ready to prove it." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Let's talk numbers." 2 hours later, I stood outside the restaurant, hands shaking as I called Layla. "Well?" she demanded. "They're in," I whispered. $5 million in seed funding. Layla, they're actually in." Her scream made me hold the phone away from my ear. "I'm coming over with champagne. We have to celebrate." That evening, as Layla and I sat on my apartment floor sharing cheap champagne, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Holly, a former colleague from my father's company. "Heard about your funding round. Valerie won't be happy when she finds out you're becoming competition. Watch your back." I showed the text to Layla, who rolled her eyes. "Delete it. She's just trying to get in your head." But as I stared at the message, something clicked. "No, this is perfect. Let her tell Valerie. Let them all watch." "Caitlin." Layla's voice held a warning note. "I'm not doing this for revenge," I assured her, though part of me wondered if that was true. "I'm doing it because I finally can. Because I should have done it years ago." I raised my plastic cup. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Layla echoed, "and to showing them all what you're made of." As we clinked cups, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Adrian. "Congratulations. Now the real work begins." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. He was right. This was just the beginning. But for the first time since that day in the lawyer's office, I knew exactly where I was headed. And Valerie? Well, she'd find out soon enough. 3 years can change everything. I stood at the podium of the National Business Innovation Conference, wrapping up my keynote speech about sustainable business practices. The same conference where, just a few years ago, I'd been nothing more than an attendee with big dreams. And that's how we reduced packaging waste by 60% across all our partner companies, I concluded. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. As I stepped down, Adrian met me backstage with a proud smile. Knocked it out of the park, kid. He handed me a water bottle. But heads up, Holly's here. Of course she is. I took a sip, scanning the crowd. Probably gathering intel for her copycat product line. Speaking of intel, Adrian lowered his voice. Have you seen the news about Valerie? Before I could answer, Holly materialized beside us, wearing her signature predatory smile. Caitlin, fantastic speech. Almost as good as the one I gave last year. She air-kissed my cheek. We simply must catch up. Have you heard about your sister's little situation? Holly, I nodded coolly. Still riding on other people's innovations? Her smile tightened. Better than riding on Daddy's coattails. Oh wait, that would be Valerie, wouldn't it? Though not for much longer, from what I hear. She sashayed away, leaving me staring after her. Adrian touched my arm. You should probably see this. He pulled up a news article on his phone. The headline hit me like a punch. O'Brien Enterprises faces bankruptcy amid CEO's lavish spending. There's more. Adrian swiped through photos. That yacht company she bought? Sinking faster than the Titanic. And her husband Philip apparently cleaned out their joint accounts before filing for divorce. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, a complicated knot formed in my stomach. Ms. O'Brien? An event coordinator appeared. The press is ready for you. The next hour was a blur of interviews and photographs. I answered questions about my company's success, our expansion plans, the new headquarters we were building. Nobody mentioned Valerie, but I could feel the whispers following me. Later that evening, at the conference gala, Layla found me hiding by the dessert table. Stop stress-eating chocolate truffles and dance with me, she commanded, pulling me onto the dance floor. This is your moment. You're the youngest keynote speaker they've ever had. Did you know? I asked as we swayed to the music. About Valerie? I didn't want to distract you before your speech. She studied my face. How do you feel about it? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to celebrate, but she's still your sister, Layla finished. Our conversation was interrupted by my phone buzzing. An email from the charity foundation I'd started last year. Invitation to host annual fundraising gala. Perfect timing. Layla peered over my shoulder. You can show off that ridiculous mansion you just bought. It's not ridiculous, it's investment property. It has a fountain in the foyer. Before I could defend my real estate choices, Holly's voice cut through the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen. She clinked her glass, commanding attention. I have an exciting announcement. My company is launching a revolutionary new eco-friendly packaging line. My blood ran cold. The description she gave matched our upcoming product exactly, the one we hadn't announced yet. That snake, Layla hissed. She must have gotten her hands on our prototype designs. I felt eyes turning to me, waiting for my reaction. Instead of showing anger, I smiled and raised my glass. Congratulations, Holly, though you might want to check your numbers. That design you're describing? We patented it 6 months ago. The color drained from Holly's face as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Adrian appeared at my side, grinning. Already sent cease and desist letters to her office. Told you we should patent everything early. As Holly made a hasty exit, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. Katie, it's me. Can we talk? Please. My hands trembled as I showed the message to Layla. Valerie, she whispered. Are you going to respond? I stared at the screen, remembering the last time I'd seen my sister. The way she'd dismissed me, treated me like a child who needed managing. Not tonight, I decided, putting my phone away. Tonight we celebrate. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the image of Valerie alone in that big empty house, watching her empire crumble. I thought of Dad, of what he would say if he could see us now. "Karma's a funny thing," Adrian said, appearing beside me with fresh champagne. "Question is, what are you going to do with it?" I took the glass, watching the bubbles rise. "I'm going to host that charity gala," I decided, "and I'm going to make sure everyone gets an invitation, including Valerie. The ice sculptures are melting." I paced the grand foyer of my mansion, phone pressed to my ear. "And the caterer's running late." "Breathe," Layla commanded through the speaker. "Everything's under control. I'm handling the caterer, and nobody cares about ice sculptures anyway." She was right, of course. The real reason for my anxiety had nothing to do with melting ice or late catering. It was the thought of seeing Valerie again after all these years. "Did she RSVP?" I asked, though I'd checked the list a dozen times. "Yes, and you know it. Now go get dressed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. 2 hours later, I stood greeting guests as they arrived for the charity gala. My home buzzed with Seattle's business elite, all here to support children's education, and perhaps catch a glimpse of the drama they'd been whispering about. Gorgeous event. Adrian appeared at my elbow, looking dapper in his tuxedo. Though I think the fountain in the foyer might be a bit much. "Not you two," I laughed, but the sound died in my throat as I caught sight of the entrance. Valerie stood in the doorway, almost unrecognizable. Gone were the designer dresses and diamond jewelry. She wore a simple black cocktail dress that had seen better days, her hair pulled back in a modest bun. But it was her eyes that struck me. The confident sparkle replaced by something haunted. "Showtime," Adrian murmured, squeezing my arm before disappearing into the crowd. Valerie approached slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. "Katie, thank you for inviting me." "Valerie." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Welcome." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she broke it. "Your home is beautiful," she said softly. "You've done well for yourself." "Yes, I have." I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "No thanks to Ms. O'Brien." A reporter from the Seattle Times approached with a photographer. "Could we get a photo of the hostess?" "Of course." I turned away from Valerie, plastering on my media smile. The evening progressed in a blur of speeches and donation pledges. I was announcing the final fundraising total when I noticed Valerie slip out onto the terrace. Against my better judgment, I followed her. She stood at the railing, staring out at the city lights below. "Remember when we used to share a bedroom?" she asked without turning around. "And we'd stay up late planning our futures?" "That was a long time ago. I've lost everything, Katie." Her voice cracked. "The company, the house, my marriage. Philip took it all." "I heard." I moved to stand beside her. "Karma's funny that way." She flinched. "I deserve that, but I need your help, please." "My help?" I laughed bitterly. "Like you helped me when Dad died?" I was wrong. She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "I was stupid and greedy and wrong. But I'm your sister. Were you my sister when you convinced Dad I couldn't handle the business? When you watched me walk away with nothing?" "That's not... I didn't..." She slumped against the railing. "I don't have anywhere else to go." Inside, the party continued. I could hear laughter, the clink of glasses, the sound of success I'd built from scratch. Everything I'd achieved because she'd left me no choice. "There's a position open," I heard myself say. "Entry level, cleaning staff." Valerie's head snapped up. "What? You want my help?" "Start at the bottom, like I did." I met her gaze steadily. "The job pays $15 an hour. Take it or leave it." "You want me to be your maid?" Her voice trembled between hurt and anger. "I want you to learn what it means to work for something." I turned to go back inside. "Think about it." "Katie, wait." She grabbed my arm. I'll do it. I stared at her, searching for signs of manipulation or deceit. But all I saw was desperation and something else. Shame. Be here Monday at 8 a.m. I pulled away gently. Don't be late. As I walked back into the gala, Layla intercepted me. I saw Valerie leave. Are you okay? She's starting work here on Monday, I said, grabbing a champagne flute from a passing waiter. As what? Layla's eyes widened as I told her. Holy shit, that's either brilliant or cruel. I'm not sure which. Neither am I. I watched the bubbles rise in my glass. But it feels like something needs to break before it can be fixed. Just be careful, Layla warned. Karma works both ways. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead to Monday morning, wondering if Valerie would actually show up. And if she did, what then? The answer would come sooner than I expected. Monday morning arrived with a surreal quality. I sat at my kitchen island, watching the security camera feed on my tablet as Valerie pulled up in a beat-up Honda Civic, a far cry from her usual luxury vehicles. You're really doing this? Layla asked, setting down a coffee mug beside me. She'd stayed over, claiming she needed to work on project files, but we both knew she was here for moral support. She's 3 minutes early, I noted, ignoring the question. The doorbell rang. Maria, my regular housekeeper, answered it. I'd briefed her yesterday about training the new hire, carefully avoiding any mention of our relationship. I switched to the foyer camera feed. Valerie stood awkwardly in jeans and a plain t-shirt, looking like a stranger in her own skin. I should go down, I said, not moving. No, Layla touched my shoulder. Let Maria handle it. That's what you'd do with any other new employee, right? She was right, but it didn't make it any easier to watch Maria hand my sister a uniform and lead her to the staff changing room. My phone buzzed. A text from Philip, Valerie's ex-husband. Heard you hired Val. Careful. She'll rob you blind like she did me. I showed the message to Layla, who snorted. Rich, coming from the guy who emptied their joint accounts. What really happened there? I asked. Adrian mentioned something about fraud. From what I heard, Philip was running a Ponzi scheme through their yacht business. When it started falling apart, he transferred everything to offshore accounts and disappeared. Left Valerie holding the bag with the investors. The irony wasn't lost on me. So she got played the same way she played me. Life's funny that way. Layla gathered her things for work. Just don't enjoy this too much, okay? After she left, I tried to focus on work emails, but my attention kept drifting to the security feeds. I watched Valerie follow Maria from room to room, learning to clean toilets and dust priceless artwork. Her hands shook as she carried cleaning supplies, and twice she had to stop to wipe tears. Around noon, my intercom buzzed. Ms. O'Brien? Maria's voice crackled through. The new girl cut her hand on some broken glass. Should I send her home? I closed my eyes, counting to 10. No, I'll handle it. Send her to the kitchen. Minutes later, Valerie appeared, cradling her hand. A bloody paper towel was wrapped around her palm. Sit. I pointed to a bar stool, pulling out the first aid kit. Let me see. It's fine, she mumbled. I can keep working. Valerie, sit down. She perched on the edge of the stool while I cleaned the cut. It wasn't deep, but it had bled quite a bit. Remember when you used to patch me up after I fell off my bike? She asked quietly. Remember when you used to look out for me instead of stabbing me in the back? Her face crumpled. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? I pressed the bandage perhaps a little harder than necessary. By taking everything? Philip convinced me you'd run the company into the ground. She winced at the pressure. He said you were too idealistic, too focused on environmental initiatives instead of profit. I believed him because it was easier than admitting I was jealous. Jealous? Of what? Of how much Dad loved you. How proud he was of your ideas. She looked down at her bandaged hand. I was the older sister, but you were always his favorite. I stepped back. anger warring with an unexpected pang of sympathy. That's not true. Dad loved us both. Maybe. She stood up, straightening her uniform. But he respected you more. And now I know why. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Adrian. "Turn on the business news," he said without preamble. Holly's company just announced bankruptcy. I grabbed the remote, switching on the kitchen TV. Sure enough, there was Holly, being escorted from her office building while reporters swarmed. Turns out copying our patent wasn't her only illegal activity, Adrian continued. She's been cooking the books for years. Valerie watched the screen, her expression unreadable. "That could have been me," she said softly. If I hadn't. But it wasn't," I finished. "You lost everything, but at least you didn't lose your freedom." She nodded, then gestured to the cleaning supplies. "I should get back to work." As she turned to leave, I called after her. "Val, the cut? Keep it clean. Come back if it needs changing." A ghost of our old connection flickered between us. Fragile, barely there, but present. "Thanks, Katie." She paused at the door. "For everything." I watched her go, wondering if this strange experiment in revenge was turning into something else entirely. Something neither of us had expected. 2 weeks into our new arrangement, I found Valerie crying in the laundry room. She sat on an overturned basket, shoulders shaking, clutching a familiar blue sweater, Dad's sweater. "I didn't know you kept it," she whispered as I stood in the doorway. "I wear it sometimes," I said, "when I need to make big decisions." She tried to fold it, her hands trembling. "I found his reading glasses in his desk after everything. I still have them in my apartment. My tiny, horrible apartment." I should have walked away. Instead, I sat on another basket across from her. "How bad is it? Really?" "Bad." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "The debt collectors call every day. I'm living off ramen noodles and my landlord's threatening eviction." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Adrian's message made my blood run cold. "Turn on the news now." I pulled out my tablet, Valerie peering over my shoulder as I opened a news stream. The headline blared, "Breaking, Philip arrested in Bali for international finance fraud." Oh God. Valerie's face went white. "They'll think I knew. The investors, the authorities, they'll think I was part of it." As if on cue, my phone exploded with notifications. Reporters wanting comments, business associates asking questions. "We need to get ahead of this," I said, already dialing Adrian. "Come with me." In my home office, Adrian was already on speakerphone with my PR team. "The press is going to be all over this," he warned. "They'll dig up everything. The inheritance, the company transfer, all of it." "Let them," I heard myself say. "We'll tell them the truth." "Katie, no." Valerie grabbed my arm. "You can't expose yourself like that. Your reputation." "We'll survive." I turned to her. "But we need to know everything. No more secrets." For the next 2 hours, Valerie laid it all bare. How Philip had manipulated her, using her insecurities about Dad's preferences to push his agenda. How he'd convinced her that taking control of the company was the only way to protect it from my risky environmental initiatives. He said Dad signed the new will voluntarily. She finished, her voice hoarse. I never knew about the forged documents until it was too late. Adrian's sharp intake of breath matched my own. Forged documents? I found out 6 months ago. Philip bragged about it during a fight. Said Dad never actually changed the will. By then, everything was falling apart, and I was too ashamed to tell you. My head spun. All this time, Dad hadn't betrayed me after all. "We can fix this," Adrian said firmly. "But we need to move fast. Caitlin, are you willing to make a public statement supporting your sister?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself. "But on one condition." I turned to Valerie. "You come work for me. Not as cleaning staff, in the company. Starting at entry-level management, learning the business properly this time." "Why would you do that?" She looked stunned. "After everything?" Because you're my sister, and because Dad would have wanted us to work together, like we were supposed to all along. The press conference the next day was a circus. I stood at the podium, cameras flashing, and told our story. The manipulation, the fraud, the reconciliation. When I finished, Valerie stepped up beside me. My sister offered me a chance to earn back what I lost, she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. Not just the business, but her trust. I don't deserve it, but I'm going to spend every day trying to. The headlines the next day were surprisingly positive. Sisters unite against fraud, family business redemption story, O'Brien sisters from rivalry to recovery. That evening, as we sat in my kitchen reviewing the media coverage, Layla arrived with takeout and a suspicious expression. "If this is another trick," she warned Valerie. "If you hurt her again—" "It's not," Valerie and I said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. "Well, that's creepy," Layla muttered, but she was smiling as she unpacked the food. My phone buzzed, another message from Adrian. "Your father would be proud today." I looked at Valerie, who was carefully separating her broccoli from her beef, just like she used to do when we were kids. The anger I'd carried for so long felt lighter somehow, making room for something else. Something like hope. "Hey, Val," I said, reaching for the soy sauce. "Dad's old office is still empty. Think you could help me clean it out this weekend?" Her smile was watery but real. "I'd like that." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close, but it was a start. "Look what I found." Valerie's voice cracked as she pulled a dusty photo album from Dad's old desk drawer. We'd been cleaning his office all morning, sorting through years of memories and forgotten paperwork. "I haven't seen that in years," I said, wiping dust from the leather cover. Inside were photos of us as kids. Gap-toothed grins, matching Christmas dresses, birthday parties. "Wait." Valerie pulled out a yellowed envelope tucked between pages. "This is Dad's handwriting." My heart stopped as I read the date on the envelope. 2 weeks before he died. Inside was a letter written in Dad's familiar scrawl. "My dearest girls," Valerie read aloud, her voice trembling. "If you're reading this, something's gone wrong. The will I signed today doesn't reflect my true wishes. Philip insisted on changes that didn't feel right. But he's threatened to expose irregularities in our company's environmental compliance. He blackmailed Dad?" I grabbed the letter. "That son of a—" "There's more." Valerie pointed to the next paragraph. "I always intended for you both to run the company together. Katie's innovation with Val's business sense, you'd be unstoppable. I'm trying to find a way to fix this. If I can't, know that I love you both equally." The letter slipped from my fingers. All these years, we'd been playing into Philip's hands, letting him tear our family apart. My phone rang. "Adrian, turn on CNBC," he said without preamble. "They're covering Philip's arrest." We rushed to my office, flipping on the TV. Philip stood in handcuffs, being led through an airport terminal. "Breaking news. International authorities have uncovered evidence of widespread fraud spanning multiple companies," the reporter announced. "Sources say Philip Sanderson manipulated corporate documents, including his former father-in-law's will. We need to go public with the letter," I said, already reaching for my phone. "Wait." Valerie caught my wrist. "There's something else you need to know first." She pulled out her phone, showing me an email from last year. It was from Philip to her, threatening to reveal her role in environmental violations if she didn't transfer more company assets to their joint accounts. "I was trying to protect Dad's legacy," she whispered. "But I just made everything worse." "You should have told me." "I know. I was ashamed. Scared." She met my eyes. "The old me would have hidden this forever. But I'm done with secrets." My phone buzzed again. Layla this time. "Have you seen the news? Holly's giving interviews, claiming she has dirt on both of you." "Let her try," I said, holding up Dad's letter. "We have the truth now." The next few hours were a whirlwind. We called Adrian and our legal team, setting up an emergency press conference. By evening, we stood together at company headquarters, facing a room full of reporters. Today we discovered evidence that proves what we've long suspected, I began, holding up the letter. Our father was coerced into changing his will through blackmail and fraud. Valerie stepped forward. I take full responsibility for my part in this. I let fear and manipulation cloud my judgment, and I hurt the person who mattered most, my sister. The questions came rapid fire. Will you press charges against Philip? What about the environmental violations? Is this why Holly's company really went bankrupt? One at a time, Adrian intervened from the sidelines. Ms. O'Brien, both Ms. O'Briens, will address everything. As we answered questions, I felt something shift in the room. The story wasn't just about corporate fraud anymore. It was about family, redemption, and the courage to face hard truths. Later that night, back in Dad's office, Valerie and I sat surrounded by boxes and memories. Remember when we used to sneak in here and play office? She asked, picking up his old nameplate. You always made me be the secretary. Because you had better handwriting. She laughed, then grew serious. I'm sorry, Katie, for everything. I know. I reached for Dad's sweater, draped over his chair. Here, you should have this. She shook her head. Keep it. It looks better on you anyway. My phone lit up with a news alert. O'Brien sisters unite, family legacy restored amid corporate scandal. They got it wrong, Valerie said, reading over my shoulder. The legacy wasn't restored. It's being rebuilt. Better this time. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And saw not the sister who had betrayed me, but the one who used to chase away monsters under my bed. Together? I asked. She smiled, tears in her eyes. Together? Outside, camera flashes still lit up the building entrance. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more challenges. But for now, in Dad's old office, two sisters began the real work of healing. And somewhere, I knew Dad was smiling. Ready for this? Valerie squeezed my hand as we stood outside the courthouse. Philip's sentencing was about to begin. As ready as I'll ever be. I straightened my blazer, Dad's sweater underneath giving me strength. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Holly sat in the back row, looking deflated since her failed attempt to smear our names had backfired. When Philip was let in, he barely resembled the polished businessman who'd torn our family apart. All rise, the bailiff called, as the judge read through Philip's crimes. Fraud, forgery, blackmail, money laundering. I felt Valerie trembling beside me. Layla, sitting on my other side, passed her a tissue. Before I deliver the sentence, the judge announced, would the victims like to make a statement? Valerie and I approached the podium together. We'd practiced this moment, but now the words felt different. Your Honor, I began, the money Philip stole can be replaced. The companies he destroyed can be rebuilt. But he stole something far more precious, years we could have spent as a family. Valerie stepped forward. Our father died believing his daughters would hate each other forever. That's time we can never get back. Philip's face remained impassive as the judge sentenced him to 15 years. As he was led away, he turned to us with a sneer. You think this changes anything? You're still the same spoiled brats fighting over Daddy's money. No, Valerie replied calmly. We're business partners now, and we're better at it than you ever were. Outside, reporters clamored for statements. Adrian shepherded us through the crowd to where Maria waited with the car. Home? She asked, holding the door. I looked at Valerie. Actually, let's go to the office. We have work to do. In Dad's old office, now our shared space, we settled into the familiar rhythm we'd developed. Valerie reviewed acquisition proposals while I finalized our new sustainable packaging patents. Look at this, she said suddenly, pulling up an email. Holly's former employees want to join our team. They say she stole their ideas too. Hire them, I decided. All of them. We'll need the extra hands for the expansion anyway. Speaking of expansion, Valerie pulled out a familiar blueprint, Dad's original plans for an eco-friendly manufacturing facility. Remember when you first proposed this? The one Philip said would bankrupt us? Dad loved that idea. I traced the faded lines. He said it was ahead of its time. Well, now it's time. She spread out updated projections. With the new patents and tax incentives, we could break ground next quarter. Adrian knocked and entered, carrying coffee and a newspaper. Thought you should see this. The headline read, O'Brien sisters transform family crisis into environmental innovation. Not bad, Layla said, appearing behind him. But wait until they see what's next. She handed us each an envelope. Inside were invitations to the reopening of Dad's favorite children's hospital wing, now funded by our foundation and renamed in his honor. He would have loved this, Valerie whispered. The grand opening's next week, Layla continued. The mayor's coming and— Cancel the mayor, I interrupted. Instead, let's invite the kids from the pediatric ward. Make it a real party. Games, face painting, the works. Just like Dad used to do for us. Valerie smiled. Remember those birthday parties he'd throw? Complete with that horrible magic act? Hey, he practiced those tricks for weeks. We laughed, and for a moment I could almost hear Dad's booming laugh joining ours. By the way, Adrian cleared his throat. The final paperwork came through. The company's officially renamed to O'Brien Sisters Enterprise. Valerie and I exchanged glances. Actually, I said, we have a better idea. The next morning, we unveiled the new company sign together. O'Brien Family Industries, building a sustainable future. As employees gathered for the ceremony, I noticed Maria watching from the back, smiling proudly. Thank you, I whispered when I reached her, for helping me see what really needed cleaning up. She patted my arm. Family is like fine crystal. Sometimes it breaks, but with careful hands, it can be more beautiful after mending. Valerie called me over to cut the ribbon. As we stood together, scissors poised, I felt Dad's presence stronger than ever. We did it, Dad, I murmured. Not the way you planned, but maybe better. The ribbon fell, and applause erupted. Valerie hugged me tight, whispering, Think we can finally stop competing and just be sisters? I hugged her back, feeling the last pieces of resentment fall away. I think we already have. Above us, the new sign gleamed in the morning sun, promising not just a sustainable future for the environment, but for our family too. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's proving that love is stronger than hate, that truth prevails over lies, and that sisters can find their way back to each other no matter how far they've strayed.
Sometimes in life, a single moment can ignite a series of events that can either make you or break you. My name is Katie, and I once believed that a masquerade ball was just an innocent night of fun. But that night led me down a rabbit hole of revenge, mysterious encounters, and choices that forever changed the course of my life. You might think you understand the world around you, but what would you do when confronted by a game far bigger and more dangerous than you ever imagined? This is a tale of deception, of a friendship tested, and of choices that still haunt my dreams. Dive into my world, where masks don't just conceal faces, but secrets that could either set you free or trap you forever. Join me on this journey, but be warned, once you're in, there's no turning back. So, my name is Katie, and this is my story. I swear it's just a business dinner, Katie. Robert's voice echoed in my ears as I stared at the photo on my phone. The image was grainy, but I recognized the intimate corner of La Petite Bistro, the small, upscale French restaurant downtown. There, in the dim light, sat Robert, laughing, his arm draped comfortably around a woman. She wasn't from his office. Hell, she wasn't from our world, a model perhaps, or some actress from those daily soaps he claimed he never watched. And that sparkling dress? Definitely not business attire. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach, like I was free falling without a parachute. We'd been together for 5 years and lived together for 3. There'd been ups and downs, sure, but this? I never saw this coming. It's just business, I scoffed aloud to the empty apartment, feeling betrayed and stupid. A bitter taste settled in my mouth. Revenge wasn't something I believed in, but right now, it felt like the only language my broken heart understood. Pacing the living room, a plan began to form. The element of surprise was on my side. Robert didn't know I was privy to his little secret, and as I thought more about it, the perfect idea popped into my head. The annual masquerade ball, an event he'd been looking forward to for weeks. Robert had spoken about it endlessly, how significant it was for networking and for his future at the firm. If I played my cards right, I could expose him in front of everyone that mattered. Before the idea fully formed, doubt crept in. Am I being too rash? I wondered. Maybe there's an explanation. But the image of his hands on her waist refuted every hopeful thought. I rang Jenna, my best friend and the sender of the incriminating photo. "I'm in," she said, before I even had to ask. Over the years, we had a shared love for classic revenge plots from movies and books. But this was real, and the stakes were high. She suggested we make it symbolic, a play on our favorite revenge tales. The more we brainstormed, the clearer the plan became. I would crash the ball, not as Katie, his loving girlfriend, but as a mysterious stranger, taking him through a night he'd never forget. The days leading up to the ball were a whirlwind. I feigned ignorance with Robert while secretly preparing. Dress fittings, mask selections, and rehearsing my alter ego's persona became my nightly routine. My heart raced every time I thought of the upcoming confrontation, both with excitement and trepidation. Is this too extreme? I often wondered, but the scene at the bistro replayed, grounding me in my mission. The night of the ball arrived faster than I anticipated. The grand hall was bathed in shades of gold and crimson. Ornate masks concealed identities, creating an atmosphere of mystery and intrigue. Robert was there, looking dashing in his suit. From a distance, I observed him, wondering how he'd react once the game began. "Remember, make him want to chase you," Jenna whispered into my ear. She was there to support me, dressed just as extravagantly, but she'd remain in the shadows, my silent guardian. My heart pounding loudly, I stepped onto the dance floor. The lights dimmed, and the haunting strains of a violin began. I moved gracefully, letting the music guide me, making sure Robert's gaze found me. And find me, it did. As our eyes locked, I could see the confusion and curiosity in his. I beckoned him with a sly smile and danced away. The chase had begun. As the night wore on, Robert tried again and again to approach me. Each time I'd slip away, leaving him more intrigued. He seemed hooked, desperately trying to figure out the identity of the mysterious woman who'd captured his attention. Every move was calculated, every glance intended to draw him deeper into my web. Towards the midnight hour, I finally allowed him to corner me in a secluded balcony, the city lights playing a muted backdrop to our impending confrontation. As he stepped closer, trying to peek beneath my mask, I spoke in a voice I hoped he wouldn't recognize. "Do you enjoy playing games, Robert?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Who are you?" With a deep breath, ready to reveal everything and bring my plan to its climax, I slowly removed my mask. His eyes widened in shock, trying to process the familiar face beneath the mask. But before he could fully grasp it, I quickly replaced my mask, maintaining my mysterious aura. "You didn't answer my question," I whispered, playing with the ends of the mask's ribbon. There was a flash of recognition, but confusion quickly took over. "Katie?" he stammered, but I wouldn't let him break my character. "Ah, names, so binding, so revealing," I replied in a playful tone, circling him. "Tonight, I'm not Katie. Tonight, I'm just a curious soul, wondering why men play games. Can you tell me, Robert?" He gulped, the weight of the situation slowly dawning on him. "This is about the dinner, isn't it?" He was visibly nervous now, his polished demeanor from earlier crumbling. "I saw an interesting photo recently," I mused aloud, looking out at the cityscape. A man claimed he was at a business dinner, but it didn't seem like business to me. What do you think? Robert's face paled. He opened his mouth, seemingly searching for the right words. Katie, I can explain. It's not— Shh, I interrupted, holding a finger to his lips. It's not about explanations tonight. It's about games, remember? My phone buzzed then, Jenna's timing impeccable. The screen lit up with another picture, a close-up of Robert and the same woman taken just hours ago at the bar adjoining the Grand Hall. Looks like your business associate is here tonight too, I observed casually. He looked genuinely surprised this time. I swear, Katie, I didn't know she'd be here. It's just a coincidence. Or another game? I challenged, enjoying the upper hand. How about this, Robert? A scavenger hunt. For every riddle you solve, you get a piece of the truth, and maybe, by the end, you'll understand the rules of the game you started. He nodded hesitantly. Okay, what's the first riddle? I handed him a small card. Find the golden chalice at the bar, and your next clue will be revealed. For the next hour, I watched from the shadows as Robert frantically searched for clues, each one designed to lead him deeper into a maze of self-realization. Jenna and I had carefully planted hints around the venue, references to our shared past, and the trust he'd so easily broken. With every discovery, I could see him becoming more distraught, his confident demeanor from earlier completely shattered. Each clue was a reflection, a moment where he had to confront the duplicity of his actions. In the grand ballroom, beneath a massive crystal chandelier, he found the final clue, a small box with a ring inside, a replica of the promise ring he'd given me years ago. Attached was a note. Promises are meant to be kept, not broken. I stepped out of the shadows, my mask still in place. Game over, Robert. Did you find what you were looking for? He looked defeated, the weight of his actions bearing down on him. Katie, I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I got lost, distracted. But it's not what you think. Then enlighten me, I challenged, eyes piercing into his. Just as Robert began to speak, a familiar voice interrupted. Katie? We both turned to see the woman from the photo, the business associate, approaching with a puzzled look. She was holding a similar scavenger hunt card in her hand. What's going on? She asked, her eyes darting between me and Robert. Suddenly, everything became clear. Robert wasn't the only player in this game. Jenna? Robert's voice cracked with disbelief as the woman removed her mask, revealing herself to be my best friend. I had to stifle a chuckle. In all the scenarios Robert had imagined, this was probably the least expected. Hello, Robert, Jenna replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Enjoying the party? Robert's face was a mix of bewilderment, fear, and realization. Wait, this was all— Why? Jenna stepped closer, her heels clicking ominously on the marble floor. You see, Robert, when you play games with one of us, you play with both of us, I chimed in. It's like a package deal, didn't you know? Best friends share everything, even reveng plots. His face contorted, struggling to grasp the full extent of our scheming. But why would you help her? We had something special. Robert tried to appeal to Jenna. She smirked. Oh, we had our fun, but loyalty always wins. Plus, you weren't that special. Robert looked crushed, caught between two women he'd underestimated. So this was all a setup? The photos, the clues, everything? Jenna and I exchanged a knowing look. Well, not everything, I mused. Your deceit, your betrayal, that was all you. We just brought it to light in the most entertaining way possible. The atmosphere in the ballroom was electric. Whispers had started among the other masked guests, sensing the drama unfolding. Some took out their phones, eager to capture the moment. You both played me? Robert stuttered, his confidence completely shattered. "Looks like the tables have turned," Jenna said smugly, wrapping an arm around me. "In this game of deception, we proved to be the better players." As much as I was enjoying Robert's downfall, a part of me still cared. "Robert," I said, taking a deep breath. "It wasn't just about revenge. It was about teaching you a lesson. You can't toy with people's emotions and expect no consequences." Jenna nodded. "We gave you a taste of your own medicine. How does it feel to be on the other side?" Silence enveloped the grand ballroom, the tension palpable. Robert's shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered, genuine remorse in his eyes. "I never wanted any of this." Jenna scoffed. "Neither did we. But sometimes life has a funny way of serving justice." A slow clap started from the back of the room, gradually picking up momentum as more guests joined in, a mix of amusement and respect on their faces. I sighed, a mix of relief and sadness washing over me. Game over, Robert. As Jenna and I turned to leave, I took one last look at him. There he stood, alone and defeated in the center of the ballroom. A part of me pitied him, but another part felt vindicated. "Come on," Jenna whispered. "Let's leave the past behind and enjoy the party." Arm in arm, we walked away, our plan executed flawlessly. But little did I know, the night still had a few surprises in store. As Jenna and I moved through the crowd, the reality of our accomplishment began to sink in. We had successfully orchestrated the perfect revenge. A cocktail of smug satisfaction and lingering tension colored the atmosphere, making each step feel like a victory march. But as the initial euphoria faded, a nagging doubt began to crawl into my mind. Had we gone too far? The image of Robert, defeated and isolated, kept replaying. I was jarred from my thoughts when Jenna tugged at my arm, her eyes wide. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the far end of the ballroom. There stood a figure, draped in a dark cloak, his face obscured by an ornate silver mask. It wasn't the costume that caught our attention, but the fact that he stood next to the portrait Robert had commissioned, the one that had started it all. In his hand, he held a red rose, identical to the one Robert had given me at that cursed business dinner. "Who is that?" I murmured, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. "I don't know," Jenna replied, her voice tinged with concern. "But he's been watching us since we entered." Deciding to confront the mysterious stranger, we made our way towards him. As we approached, he turned, his eyes locked onto mine, giving me an unsettling feeling. "You must be the star of tonight's performance," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "Your little scheme was quite illuminating." "Who are you?" I demanded, my heart rate increasing. The man chuckled. "A mere spectator, fascinated by the game you two played." Jenna stepped forward, her protective instincts kicking in. "What do you want?" He smiled, revealing a set of unnervingly white teeth. "Just to offer my congratulations, and perhaps a warning." "A warning?" I echoed, confusion and fear blending into a chilling cocktail. "Yes," he continued. "While you might have won tonight, be wary of resting on your laurels. There are bigger games afoot, with players far more cunning than dear Robert." My stomach twisted in anxiety. "Are you threatening us?" He laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "No, merely a piece of advice. Tonight, you reveled in the thrill of deception and revenge, but such games can be addictive, and not everyone you might cross in the future will be as easy to outmaneuver as Robert." The weight of his words settled heavily. While our revenge had felt justified, had we inadvertently set ourselves up for something more dangerous? The mysterious man placed the red rose on a nearby table. "Remember this rose. It's a reminder that every action has consequences, and the world is filled with shadows and secrets." With that cryptic message, he melted into the crowd, leaving Jenna and me stunned. The rest of the night was a blur. We tried to enjoy the party, but the encounter with the masked man had cast a shadow over the celebrations. As we left the ballroom, the early morning chill greeting us, Jenna turned to me. "Do you think he was serious? About there being bigger games?" I thought for a moment, the cold air crystallizing my fears. "I don't know, but one thing's for sure. We need to be careful. Our little revenge plot might have opened a door we can't easily close." Jenna nodded, hugging herself against the cold. "We'll face it together, whatever comes our way." And with that silent vow between best friends, we walked into the night, unaware of the adventures and challenges that awaited us. The days that followed were unsettling. Everywhere I went, I felt as if I were being watched. Every creak in my apartment, every rustling of the trees outside my window, every unexpected phone call sent my heart racing. "I can't live like this," I said to Jenna one evening. We were at her apartment, the TV blaring some random show in the background, its significance lost amidst our concern. Every moment feels like a countdown to something, and I don't even know what. Jenna, ever the pillar of strength, sighed. "We just need some kind of closure. We need to find out who that man was." But how? We had no leads, no name, nothing but a silver mask and a cryptic warning. Our chance, however, came from an unexpected quarter. A few days later, an ornate envelope landed on my doorstep. The front bore just one word: invitation. Cautiously, I opened it. Inside was a card with an address, date, and time. At the bottom, a sketch of a silver mask. My hand shook. The mysterious man was reaching out. I immediately called Jenna. "We need to go," she said resolutely. "If we ever want peace of mind, we need answers." The address led us to an old mansion on the outskirts of town. On the appointed evening, we found ourselves outside its grand doors. Taking a deep breath, we stepped inside. The interior was a mix of opulence and decay. Dusty chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystals catching the dim light, and worn-out tapestries decorated the walls. In the middle of the hall, surrounded by a circle of chairs, stood the mysterious man, still wearing his silver mask. "Welcome," he greeted, gesturing for us to sit. Hesitant, we took our seats, our senses on high alert. "As you've probably guessed, I have been watching you," he began. "Your little game with Robert was intriguing, and while it was entertaining, it caught the attention of people like me, those who play a far more dangerous game." I gulped. "Who are you?" He removed his mask, revealing a middle-aged man with sharp features and piercing eyes. "I am Lysander, and I represent a society that thrives on challenges, games of wit, strategy, and sometimes danger." Jenna leaned forward. "Why bring us here?" Lysander smiled. "To offer you a place in our society. Your handling of Robert showcased intelligence and resourcefulness, traits we value." My heart raced. Was this an opportunity or a trap? "And if we refuse?" Lysander shrugged. "You walk away. But remember, life is a game. Whether you play with us or against us is up to you." Jenna and I exchanged glances. This was bigger than any revenge plot. It was a crossroad, one that would shape our future. "We need time to decide," Jenna finally said. Lysander nodded, placing his mask back on. "Of course, but remember, the clock is ticking." Leaving the mansion, the weight of the decision pressed on us. On one hand, this could be an opportunity to delve into a world of intrigue and excitement. On the other, it promised danger and uncertainty. For nights, Jenna and I debated, weighed our options, and examined our desires. And after countless hours of introspection, we made our choice. Reaching out to Lysander, we decided to decline his offer. The taste of revenge, the thrill of the game, it was intoxicating, yes. But some doors, once opened, can never be closed, and we weren't ready for the unknown that lay beyond. Lysander respected our decision, and as promised, he let us walk away. Our lives returned to a semblance of normalcy, but with a newfound appreciation for the mundane. Years passed, and the memory of that fateful night at the masquerade and the mysterious invitation began to fade. But every once in a while, when the night was quiet and the shadows grew long, I would find a single red rose on my doorstep, a silent reminder of the game we once played and the choices we made. And so, as I pen down this account, my message is simple. Revenge might taste sweet, and the thrill of the game might be enticing, but always remember, every choice has consequences, and sometimes the price might be too high. It's funny how one sentence can completely upend your life. I want a break. Those 4 words from my husband, Mark, started me on a roller coaster journey that I could never have anticipated. As I dove into a web of deception, betrayal, and cunning schemes, I realized that some games are far deadlier than they appear. Teaming up with my best friend, Jenna, we embarked on a mission that would not only test our wits, but the very fabric of our bonds. If you think you know about trust, revenge, and the dark corners of human nature, think again. My name is Amber, and this is the most unexpected chapter of my life. It was a chilly Sunday evening when my husband, Mark, looked up from his book and uttered those 5 words that would send my life into a whirlwind. "I want a break," he murmured, barely audible. I thought I'd misheard him, so I paused the movie we were half watching. "What did you say?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. I'd expected a lot of things to come out of his mouth, but not that. He repeated it, clearer this time, avoiding my gaze. I said, "I want a break." The air in the room suddenly felt denser. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Why? What's wrong? Was it something I did? I wondered. Before I could even respond, he added, "There's someone else." The world seemed to spin. Someone else? After 15 years of marriage, after countless memories, joys, and challenges we'd faced together, he was just throwing it all away? "What do you mean, someone else?" I choked out, feeling the sting of tears, but I was determined not to cry. Not yet. He hesitated, took a deep breath, and then said, "It's not what you think. It's not an affair." Confused and struggling to grasp the situation, I pressed on. "Then what is it, Mark? What's going on?" He sighed, seemingly conflicted. It's Brad." "Brad? As in Brad, his best friend from college? The same Brad who had been our wedding's best man? The one who'd come over for barbecues, birthdays, and every Super Bowl Sunday?" My brain refused to connect the dots. "Brad? What does he have to do with any of this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mark hesitated again, rubbing his temples. He approached me with an offer, an investment opportunity. It's high risk, but the rewards could set us up for life. I've taken our savings and invested them. Everything. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure it would pay off. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. All our savings, the money we'd worked so hard for, our dreams of traveling, of securing a future for our kids, it was all gone. "And you need a break because," I pressed. "I'm scared," he admitted. "If it fails, I've ruined our future. I needed some time to see it through without the pressure of explaining daily updates. I thought it would be easier for both of us." I took a moment to absorb everything. The betrayal was immense, not just from Mark, but from Brad, too. My world had been turned upside down, and I was left reeling, not knowing where to turn. Then a thought crossed my mind. How can I be sure this isn't a scheme? That Brad isn't taking advantage of you? Mark looked pained. "I trust him," he said simply. "That's what you said about us," I retorted bitterly. A silence fell over the room, only interrupted by the soft hum of the heater. In my head, a plan was forming. I wouldn't stand by and watch as our life savings disappeared into the abyss. If Brad had genuinely offered an investment, I would ensure that we got our money back, even if it meant playing a bit dirty. I thought about it long and hard. "All right, Mark," I finally said, determination lacing my voice. "Take your break, but know this, I will get to the bottom of this. If Brad is being honest, great. If not, he's going to regret ever crossing our path." With that, I started my mission. It was time for a little revenge, the type that was best served cold. I needed information and a plan. The first person that came to mind was my best friend, Jenna. She worked in the world of corporate investigations and had a knack for getting to the bottom of things. Plus, she'd been suspicious of Brad for years. The next day, over coffee, I spilled everything to Jenna. As I recounted the story, her eyes grew wider. "I knew there was something off about him," she murmured. "But don't worry, we've got this." With her resources and my determination, we began our investigation. We started by looking into the investment opportunity Brad had mentioned, a new tech startup aiming to revolutionize some segment of the digital world. On the surface, it seemed legitimate, but something felt off. Jenna managed to get a list of all the investors, and there among the names was a shock. Several of them were people who had been scammed in the past, people with a history of making poor financial decisions. It looked like Brad was preying on the vulnerable, using their trust to his advantage. But how was he benefiting? Jenna dug deeper and found that a mysterious offshore account was linked to the startup. Every time an investor put in money, a percentage was siphoned off to this account. The breadcrumbs were leading straight to Brad. I was livid, not just for Mark and me, but for all the innocent people Brad was taking advantage of. It was time to confront him. But Jenna had a different idea. "Why not play him at his own game?" she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. I was intrigued. "Go on." Jenna's plan was genius. Using a pseudonym, she'd reach out to Brad, expressing interest in investing a substantial amount. The catch? She'd insist on meeting the team behind the startup and seeing the operations firsthand. Brad took the bait. Within days, we had an appointment set up at their office, which turned out to be a rented space in a high-rise downtown. Disguised and with hidden cameras, Jenna and I entered the building. We were led into a posh office where a visibly nervous Brad greeted us. He introduced us to the team, a group of young folks who looked just as uneasy. As Jenna questioned them, it became evident that they had been hired for the day. The more we prodded, the more the story unraveled. The prototype they showed us was nothing more than a generic app, and their business plan was filled with buzzwords and no real substance. Finally, unable to take it any longer, I confronted Brad. Removing my disguise, I watched as recognition, then panic, flashed in his eyes. "I knew you were a scammer, Brad," I hissed, "but I never thought you'd sink so low." Brad tried to bluster his way out, but with the evidence we had, it was game over. Jenna discreetly passed the footage to the authorities. As we left the building, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. But there was still one more thing to do. Tell Mark the truth about his best friend. Mark had retreated to his parents' house during this break. I hadn't spoken to him since that Sunday evening, but with everything I had discovered, it was time for a conversation. Driving to his parents' place felt like the longest journey of my life. The evening sun cast long shadows on the road, and my thoughts were a tumultuous whirlwind of anger, sadness, and resolve. When I arrived, Mark was on the porch. He looked drained, shadows under his eyes hinting at sleepless nights. As I approached, he stood up, and the weight of our shared history seemed to hang in the air. Before he could speak, I handed him a tablet, where Jenna had compiled all the evidence. "Watch," I instructed. The color drained from his face as he realized the extent of Brad's deceit. The person he'd entrusted with our life savings was nothing more than a con artist. I can't believe it," he whispered. "How did I fall for this?" A myriad of emotions welled up inside me, but the overwhelming one was compassion. Yes, he had betrayed my trust by not consulting me, but he too was a victim. I took a deep breath. "We're in this together, Mark. Always have been. Now let's figure out how to fix it." The following days were a whirlwind. The police, armed with the evidence Jenna and I had gathered, raided Brad's home. They found stacks of cash, falsified documents, and enough evidence to put him behind bars for a long time. The media caught wind of the story, dubbing Brad the trust betrayer. As for the other investors, they were grateful for my efforts in exposing the scam. Many had invested even more than Mark and were facing financial ruin. Together, we started a support group, navigating the legal quagmire and helping each other cope with the emotional fallout. The courts froze Brad's assets, and while it was a lengthy process, most of the investors got a portion of their money back. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. Mark and I, amidst all the chaos, started couples therapy. We delved into the issues that had led to that fateful decision, and slowly, the chasm between us began to close. Trust, once broken, is hard to mend, but we were both determined to rebuild. Just as life seemed to be finding some semblance of normality, there was a twist I hadn't seen coming. I received an anonymous letter in the mail. The handwriting was unfamiliar and shaky, but the message was clear. You think you've won, but this is just the beginning. Brad was a pawn in a bigger game. Be careful, or you might just lose everything. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Was this some cruel joke, or was there more to Brad's scheme than met the eye? I immediately called Jenna. We missed something, I said tersely. Over the next few days, Jenna and I dove deeper. Brad had been in contact with someone codenamed the Puppeteer. Through encrypted emails, they had communicated extensively. The Puppeteer was the brains behind the operation, while Brad was just the face of the scam. The more we dug, the darker things became. The Puppeteer was linked to various shady dealings worldwide. They had a reputation for being elusive and had never been caught. But why target me with that letter? It didn't make sense until Jenna made a shocking discovery. Remember that night at the high-rise when we confronted Brad? She asked. I nodded. Well, there was someone else there, watching. Jenna showed me the footage from our hidden cameras. In the background, almost obscured by shadows, was a figure observing our confrontation. They left just before the police arrived. The realization was terrifying. The Puppeteer had been close, watching every move. They knew who I was and where I lived. I think they're threatened by you, Jenna mused. You managed to disrupt one of their biggest schemes. They're scared. But I didn't feel powerful or triumphant. I felt exposed and vulnerable. With Jenna's contacts, we heightened our security. Cameras, alarms, and even a personal security detail. I felt like I was in a thriller movie, but this was no fiction. My life, and that of my family, was at stake. Then, a breakthrough. One of Jenna's contacts in the tech world managed to trace a transaction back to the Puppeteer. It was a tiny slip on their part, but it was all we needed. We discovered their real identity. Clara Bennett, a former Wall Street genius who had turned rogue after a personal tragedy. With her intelligence and resources, she'd masterminded various schemes, defrauding innocent people of millions. Confronting her wouldn't be easy. She was careful, always 2 steps ahead. But Jenna had a plan. Jenna's plan was audacious. It involved playing Clara at her own game, using deceit and strategy. The only way to catch a snake is to become one, Jenna said cryptically. We started by leaking fake information about a supposed multi-million-dollar investment opportunity. The bait was designed to be irresistible to Clara, a tech innovation that promised to disrupt the entire industry. Jenna had connections with a couple of actors who posed as the inventors, giving interviews and showcasing their invention. Sure enough, within days, we got a bite. An anonymous offer came in to buy out the technology. We arranged a meeting to discuss the deal. Given Clara's caution, we knew she'd send a representative, but we were prepared. The meeting was set in a lavish penthouse suite, wired with hidden cameras and microphones. I posed as the assistant to the inventors, while Jenna stayed behind the scenes, coordinating with our security team. A sharp-looking woman in her 30s, undoubtedly Clara's right hand, arrived to negotiate. She was skeptical and shrewd, asking detailed questions about the tech. Our actor friends played their part to perfection, convincing her of the opportunity. After hours of negotiation, we had a signed contract and, most importantly, a direct line of communication to Clara. The representative made a call right there, discussing terms and the significant numbers involved. Using voice recognition software, we confirmed our suspicion. Clara Bennett was on the other line. Over the next few days, we staged a series of accidents, causing delays and increasing the pressure on Clara. We wanted her to get involved personally. And then, the moment we had been waiting for. Clara requested a face-to-face meeting. She wanted to see the tech herself and finalize the deal. The location was a secluded mansion, one of Clara's many hideouts. With our security detail and local law enforcement hidden nearby, Jenna and I walked into the lion's den. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Clara, a tall, imposing woman with piercing eyes, greeted us. "I have to say, I'm impressed," she began, her voice dripping with condescension. "But did you really think you could fool me?" For a moment, my heart sank. Had she seen through our ruse? But then Jenna stepped forward, pulling out the signed contract. "Actually, Clara, we did." The room erupted into chaos. Clara's guards tried to intervene, but they were no match for our team. Within minutes, Clara was in cuffs, the weight of her many crimes finally catching up to her. The aftermath was intense. The media went wild over the story of Clara Bennett's capture. Mark and I appeared on numerous talk shows telling our tale. Our bond, which had been so strained, grew stronger than ever. The threat of Clara and her schemes was finally over. And while the journey had been harrowing in the end, love and persistence had triumphed over deceit. From the comforting arms of Bellevue to the electrifying pace of the city, my life transformed in ways I could never have imagined. Once wrapped in a cocoon of love and trust, a devastating betrayal by Damien pushed me out, making me question everything I held dear. I remember the pangs of pain, the numbing nights, and the struggle to find a foothold amidst the city's chaos. Yet, this is not just a tale of loss. It's the story of my rebirth. In the city's maze, I found more than just a fresh start. Alongside Maya, a beacon of strength and ambition, we ventured into the tech world, creating Lux Life. This wasn't merely an app. It was our dream molded into digital reality, a bridge between luxury and the everyday. But my journey wasn't only about corporate successes or accolades. It was about confronting the wounds Damien had inflicted, the shadows that loomed large even as Lux Life shone bright. There were reacquaintances, unexpected and intense. Encounters that reopened old scars, but also offered closure. Every step, every setback, every victory shaped me, teaching me resilience, the power of forgiveness, and the beauty of new beginnings. So, come walk with me. Dive into my narrative. Witness my rise from the depths of heartbreak, my relentless drive in the tech realm, and my eventual reconciliation with the past. This isn't just my success story. It's the testament of how, even when shattered, the human spirit can piece itself back together, stronger and more radiant than ever. My name is Amanda, and this is my story. I'd often walked the idyllic streets of Bellevue, feeling the sun-dappled leaves caress my face. It wasn't just the beauty of the town that charmed me, but also the dreams it held. Every brick, every corner, and every smile I exchanged with the townsfolk spoke of the life I'd painstakingly built with Damien. The town had been a silent witness to our story. We met at the Bellevue Summer Fair. He, with his hazel eyes and quick wit, had approached me at one of the stalls. Hours were spent talking, laughing, and sharing our dreams. It wasn't long before we found ourselves deeply in love, and with that love, we built our dream, a boutique hotel at the edge of town. Years blurred into one another as our hotel grew in popularity. The scents of fresh roses, the hum of our busy staff, and the laughter of our guests were the soundtrack of my life. Each corner of the hotel whispered stories of our combined dreams. I vividly remember designing the rooms, selecting fabrics for the curtains, and poring over menu cards for our in-house restaurant. Late evenings often saw me in our garden, sipping on a cup of tea, surrounded by the sweet scent of blooming flowers. The soft glow of the fairy lights, intertwined with the branches, created a magical ambience. Everything felt right. Everything felt perfect. That was until the day reality came crashing down. Curiously sorting through paperwork in our study one afternoon, I stumbled upon bank notices. My heart raced as I scanned through the shocking numbers. The hotel was in deep financial trouble. How had this happened? I'd been so meticulous with our funds, always ensuring we lived within our means. Confronting Damien that evening, my world shattered. The man I'd loved, trusted, and built a life with confessed to his mistakes. Not only had he gambled away our savings, but he'd also hidden his affair. The pain was unbearable. Our dream was slipping through my fingers, replaced by hurt, confusion, and a torrent of questions. In my heartbreak, Maya's voice was a balm. My best friend since college, she'd always been my anchor. We had shared countless nights talking about our dreams and aspirations. "Come to the city," she gently urged. "You deserve a fresh start." A sleepless night followed, but by dawn, the decision was made. Bellevue held too many memories, and I needed to distance myself. Packing was heart-wrenching. Each object, each memory was a stark reminder of my broken dreams. But I couldn't stay. I needed to rebuild myself. As I boarded the train, leaving behind the town, the hotel, and the man I had once adored, my heart was heavy with grief. But amidst the sorrow, a tiny flame of hope flickered. It was time to redefine myself. The deafening sounds of the city's hustle greeted me as I disembarked from the train. The towering buildings dwarfed me, their imposing structures a stark contrast to the comforting embrace of Bellevue's open landscapes. It felt like an alien world, one where everyone was on a mission, their faces set with determination, their pace unfaltering. Maya's apartment, located in the heart of the city, became my refuge. From her window, the cityscape spread out like a sea of lights, twinkling as day turned to night. The constant hum of traffic, the distant sirens, and the occasional laughter from the streets below were both unsettling and strangely comforting. Maya, ever the pillar of strength, took it upon herself to immerse me in city life. From introducing me to the local delicacies at the street corners to navigating the maze of the metro, she was my guide. But what intrigued me the most was her work. She was a project manager at a tech firm, a world I knew little about. Day by day, I tried to understand the intricacies of her job. Meetings, pitches, brainstorming sessions. It was all so foreign to me. Yet, amidst this confusion, an idea began to germinate. The world of tech was vast, filled with possibilities. I realized there was a gap, an untouched niche that combined luxury hospitality with technology. One evening, as Maya and I sat on her balcony, I hesitantly shared my thoughts. To my surprise, she was ecstatic. "You need to pitch this," she declared, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's revolutionary." Weeks went by as I worked on my idea. With Maya's guidance, I learned the ropes of the tech world, attending workshops, networking events, and countless seminars. As my concept took shape, I named it Lux Life, an app that would seamlessly integrate luxury services for high-end clients, offering them experiences like never before. Drafting a proposal, securing meetings, and finding potential investors became my daily grind. The world of business suits, PowerPoint presentations, and venture capitalists was daunting. More than once, I found myself battling doubts and insecurities. Is this truly for me? I often pondered. Can I succeed in a domain I know so little about? One particularly challenging day, after a disheartening meeting with potential investors, I returned to Maya's apartment feeling defeated. The memories of Bellevue, of my failed dreams, seemed to haunt me. But Maya, sensing my despair, enveloped me in a warm hug. "You've got this," she whispered. "Remember why you started." With renewed vigor, I delved deeper into the development of Lux's life. And as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the app began to gain traction. From initial skeptics, there emerged a growing number of believers. Lux's life's potential was undeniable. It promised something the market had never seen, and I was at its helm. As the one-year anniversary of my move to the city approached, Lux's Life was set for its official launch. Invitations were sent, the media was buzzing, and anticipation was high. But even as I prepared for this monumental moment, my thoughts often drifted back to Bellevue, to the past I had left behind. The launch date was set in a prestigious city hotel, an ironic twist considering my history with hospitality. The venue was abuzz with journalists, potential clients, investors, and a sea of curious faces. As I stood backstage, adjusting my outfit and going over my speech one last time, anxiety gripped me. Could I really pull this off? I thought. What if it fails? But when the lights dimmed and I stepped onto the stage, something changed. The crowd's attentive gaze, the hushed whispers, and the weight of the moment fueled a newfound confidence in me. With every slide I presented, every feature of Lux's life I described, the audience seemed more intrigued, their skepticism replaced by genuine interest. The questions post-presentation were relentless, but I was prepared. Hours of rehearsals with Maya had made me ready for almost anything. As the event concluded and the applause echoed in my ears, I knew Lux's life was set to be a game changer. However, the biggest shock awaited me at the after-party. Engrossed in a conversation with a group of investors, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I was met with a pair of familiar hazel eyes. "Damien." "Why are you here?" was the only thought that raced through my mind. His appearance was altered, the confident charm replaced by a look of exhaustion and regret. Before I could say anything, he began. "I had to see it for myself. The rumors about your success, they're all over Bellevue, and now the city." Taken aback, I tried to find words. "Damien, this isn't the time or place." But he persisted. "I'm genuinely happy for you, and I need you to believe that. I've realized my mistakes, the pain I caused, but seeing you here, I understand why you had to leave. You were meant for bigger things." It was overwhelming. A mix of emotions coursed through me: anger, sorrow, disbelief. "Thank you," I muttered, excusing myself from the conversation. The night was a blur after that. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Lux's life was an instant success. Its seamless integration of luxury with technology caught the attention of many, leading to numerous collaborations, partnerships, and business offers. Maya and I, once dreamers in a small town, were now names recognized in tech circles. Yet, Damien's unexpected appearance lingered in my mind. His words, his regretful demeanor, haunted my thoughts. It wasn't about reconciliation or forgiveness. It was the closure I never realized I needed. Our paths had diverged, but in that fleeting moment, there was an understanding, a silent acknowledgement of our past and the separate futures we were heading towards. Months transformed into a mosaic of memories, each tile reflecting a milestone for Lux's life. The app was now global, with a user base that spread across continents. My life, once shattered in Bellevue, was being meticulously pieced together in the city. But success, as gratifying as it was, came with its own set of challenges. Late nights became a norm, with sleep being a luxury I could seldom afford. Every morning, as I looked at my reflection, the toll was evident. The lines on my face deepened, the sparkle in my eyes dimmed, and a persistent fatigue gnawed at me. But driven by ambition and a desire to prove myself, I soldiered on. One such evening, As I pored over sheets of data in my high-rise office, the city lights painting a surreal picture outside, Maya walked in. Her face mirrored my exhaustion, but there was an urgency in her eyes. "We need to talk," she began. The discussion that ensued was a wake-up call. Maya was concerned, not just about the business, but about me. "You've built something incredible," she said, her voice a mix of pride and concern. "But at what cost? I see you pushing yourself, and it scares me." It wasn't just the work. It was the unresolved emotions, the past that I hadn't quite left behind. Damien's surprise visit, while providing some closure, had reopened old wounds. I realized I hadn't truly processed my feelings or allowed myself to heal. Seeking solitude, I took a sabbatical. The mountains, with their serene landscapes and crisp air, beckoned. Days turned into nights as I trekked, meditated, and journaled, addressing the chaos within. The breathtaking vistas provided a backdrop for introspection. One morning, perched atop a cliff, overlooking a sprawling valley, clarity dawned. While ambition and success were crucial, they couldn't be at the expense of my well-being. I needed balance. Additionally, I acknowledged the hurt Damien caused, but recognized the importance of moving on, genuinely leaving the past behind. Returning to the city, I implemented changes. Boundaries were set in my professional life, ensuring I had time for myself. Maya and I even initiated wellness programs for our team. But the most significant change was personal. I began therapy, addressing the emotional baggage I had long ignored. As weeks turned to months, the transformation was palpable. The laughter returned, the fatigue faded, and life, once a relentless marathon, became a more enjoyable journey. A year post my sabbatical, standing on my balcony, the city stretching below, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The trials, the betrayals, the heartbreaks, they had shaped me, propelled me towards a destiny I hadn't imagined. On a whim, I penned a letter to Damien, not seeking reconciliation, but offering forgiveness. It was a step, I realized, not for him, but for me. Bellevue, the town of dreams and heartbreaks, was a chapter I would always cherish. But the city, with its challenges and triumphs, was my present and future. Here, amidst the chaos, I had found myself.
My name is Helen Anderson, and I grew up in what I thought was the ideal American family. We weren't rich at first, but we were happy, just me, Mom, and Dad living in our modest starter home. My father, James Anderson, was the hardest working man I've ever known. He built his transportation company from the ground up, starting with just 2 trucks and gradually expanding into a successful business. I remember how he'd sometimes come home covered in grease because he insisted on maintaining the trucks himself in the early days. Mom, Sarah is her name, though I can barely bring myself to call her that anymore, worked as a restaurant manager back then. She was actually good at her job, though she'd constantly complain about it. One day, James, she'd say during dinner, pushing food around her plate, "I want to be a proper housewife. All these late nights are killing me." Dad would just smile and pat her hand, promising her that soon she'd be able to quit. And he kept that promise. When I was 9, Dad's business really took off. He landed several major contracts, and suddenly we were moving into this beautiful 2-story house in one of the nicest neighborhoods in town. I got my own room, huge and bright, with windows looking out over our backyard. I went wild with the decoration. Pale purple walls, fairy lights everywhere, and this massive bookshelf Dad built himself. He spent an entire weekend on it, cursing under his breath when he thought I couldn't hear him, but beaming with pride when it was finally finished. Mom quit her job shortly after we moved, just like she'd always wanted. Instead of taking care of the house like she'd claimed she wanted to, she was barely ever home. It was always lunch with the girls or just a quick shopping trip or my salon appointment ran late. Dad didn't seem to mind. He was too busy with his company, though he always made time for me. Every Sunday was our day. We'd go for ice cream, and he'd listen to all my stories about school and friends as if they were the most important things in the world. The last time we had ice cream together was just before I turned 11. It was a bright spring day, and Dad was telling me about one of his drivers calling in sick. "Guess I'll have to do the run myself tomorrow," he said, finishing his cone. "Just like the old days." "Can I come with you?" I asked, excited at the prospect of a road trip with Dad. He chuckled and ruffled my hair. "Not this time, princess. It's just a quick overnight trip. I'll be back before you know it." I remember hugging him extra tight that evening before bed. "Love you, Dad," I said, not knowing it would be the last time I'd ever say those words to him. The next morning, he left before dawn. Mom was still asleep, so Maria, our nanny, made his coffee and packed him a lunch. I heard him start his truck and pull out of the driveway. That was the last time I ever saw my father alive. The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. I know because I was awake, unable to sleep due to that strange feeling in my stomach. I heard Mom scream from her bedroom, followed by the sound of something breaking, probably her bedside lamp. The next few hours are a blur in my memory. Police officers in our living room. Maria holding me tight while Mom paced back and forth, talking on the phone. Words like massive collision and died instantly floating around me like dark butterflies. Dad's truck had collided with a semi that had jackknifed it across the highway. They said he didn't suffer, as if that was supposed to make it better somehow. But nothing made it better. Nothing could bring back my father. The funeral is mostly a haze in my mind. I remember staring at the closed casket, not really believing Dad was inside. Mom put on quite a show, wailing and practically throwing herself across the casket at one point. Looking back now, I realize how theatrical it all was, but at 11, I thought that's just how adults handled grief. It was at the funeral that I met Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia for the first time. They looked so much like strangers, yet Uncle Robert had Dad's eyes, the same kind, crinkly corners when he tried to smile at me through his tears. "Helen," he said, kneeling down to my level. "I'm your father's brother. I'm so sorry we're meeting like this. Why haven't I met you before?" I remember asking, direct as only kids can be. A shadow crossed his face. "Your father and we had a disagreement many years ago. But none of that matters now. I had to come say goodbye to my little brother." After the funeral, Mom's grief evaporated like morning dew. Within weeks, she was meeting with Dad's lawyers, taking control of his company, and acting like she knew the first thing about running a transportation business. She started throwing around terms like restructuring and modernization, but it was obvious she was just making things up as she went along. I spent most of my time with Maria, who would shake her head sadly whenever Mom came home with shopping bags from expensive stores. "Your mother's spending money like water," Maria muttered one day while making my lunch. "Those poor drivers haven't been paid properly in weeks." She was right. Dad's employees started quitting one by one. These were men and women who'd worked for him for years, some since the beginning. I remembered their names, their faces, how they used to bring me little presents from their routes. Now they were leaving, unable to feed their families on promises and excuses. 6 months after Dad's death, Mom sold what was left of his company for a fraction of what it had been worth. She acted like she'd made some brilliant business decision, but everyone knew the truth: she'd run Dad's life's work into the ground. After the sale of Dad's company, Mom was rarely home, always out somewhere, and I spent most of my time with Maria. She'd started teaching me Spanish, saying it would come in handy someday. I spent a lot of time at the library after school. It was better than coming home to an empty house. Mom would breeze in late at night, sometimes smelling of wine, barely acknowledging my existence. "Oh, you're still up," she'd say, as if surprised to find me in my own home. Then she'd disappear into her room, and I wouldn't see her again until the next evening, if at all. Then came that Sunday night. I was doing homework in the kitchen when Mom burst through the door, giggling like a teenager. She wasn't alone. Helen, sweetie, she called out, her voice thick with fake enthusiasm. Come meet Richard. Richard was tall and wore an expensive suit that somehow still looked cheap. His smile didn't reach his eyes when he looked at me. Helen, Mom said, clutching Richard's arm like a lifeline, Richard and I got married last weekend. He's your new father. We're going to be a proper family again. I already had a proper family, I said, my voice shaking. I already have a father. Richard's fake smile disappeared. Listen here, young lady, he said, his voice stern. Your mother and I are married now. You need to accept that and show some respect. You're not my father, I spat back. You'll never be my father. See what I mean? Richard turned to Mom. Difficult child. Needs discipline. But Richard moving in was just the beginning. Within a week, his mother Gloria, his sister Janet, and his 12-year-old niece Madison had all moved in too. They took over the house like an invading army, rearranging furniture and changing the decor Mom and Dad had picked out together. Mom didn't seem to mind. She and Janet became instant best friends, spending hours shopping and gossiping. Gloria took over the kitchen, complaining about Maria's cooking until Mom fired her. I lost the only person who still cared about me in that house. Then came the final blow. I came home from school one day to find Madison in my room that Dad had built the bookshelf in, my room with the purple walls and fairy lights. What are you doing? I demanded. Aunt Sarah said I could have this room, Madison smirked. It's bigger than the guest room, and I need space for all my things. Get out, I screamed. This is my room. Not anymore, she taunted, throwing my books off the shelves. Your mom says you're moving to the small room down the hall. I lost it. I lunged at Madison, and we both went down in a tangle of arms and legs. I pulled her hair while she scratched at my face, both of us screaming. Richard and Mom ran in, pulling us apart. Helen, Mom shrieked. How dare you? Go to your new room right now. No, this is my room. Dad gave it to me. Richard grabbed my arm roughly. Your father is dead, he snarled. This is my house now, and you'll do as you're told. They locked me in the small guest room for 2 days, only letting me out for school and bathroom breaks. My books and things were piled in boxes in the corner. Dad's bookshelf was thrown out with the trash. Through the wall, I could hear Madison playing music in my old room, and Mom laughing with Janet downstairs like nothing was wrong. A few weeks after the room incident, I was heading to the bathroom late at night when I heard voices from downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs, staying in the shadows. The girl is becoming more difficult every day, Richard was saying. She's disrupting our family harmony. Have you considered finding her another home? My heart stopped. Another home? You mean adoption? Mom asked, and my blood ran cold at how thoughtful she sounded. I suppose that could work. She's still young enough. It would be better for everyone, Janet added. Madison's afraid of her after that attack, and honestly, she doesn't fit in here anymore. I ran back to my room, buried my face in my pillow, and told myself they couldn't mean it. Mom wouldn't give me away. She couldn't. I pushed the conversation to the back of my mind, convincing myself it was just talk. 2 months later, my 13th birthday arrived. I wasn't expecting much, my birthdays hadn't been celebrated since Dad died. But to my surprise, Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia showed up at the door. Happy birthday, Helen, Uncle Robert said, hugging me tight. His eyes narrowed when Richard walked past, ignoring us completely. Mom had thrown together a hasty dinner, probably embarrassed that Dad's brother might judge her. The tension around the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Mom cleared her throat. Actually, Robert, Patricia, I'm glad you're here. There's something I need to discuss. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. Helen isn't happy here, Mom continued, not looking at me. And frankly, we're not happy either. She doesn't fit in with our new family dynamic. I've decided to put her up for adoption. The words hit me like a physical blow. The conversation I'd overheard hadn't been just talk after all. I thought, since you and Patricia don't have children of your own, Mom continued, her voice casual as if she were discussing the weather, you might want to take her. If not, I'll start looking for other families. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. On my birthday. She was giving me away on my birthday. Uncle Robert's chair scraped back so violently it fell over. We'll take her, he thundered, his face red with fury. And you, Sarah, are the most despicable excuse for a mother I've ever seen. How dare you? Richard started to stand, but one look from Uncle Robert made him sink back into his chair. Patricia, Uncle Robert said, his voice gentler, help Helen pack her things. We're leaving now. Aunt Patricia wrapped an arm around my shaking shoulders and led me upstairs. We packed quickly, throwing my clothes and few remaining possessions into bags. I was crying so hard I could barely see. It's going to be okay, sweetheart, Aunt Patricia kept whispering. We've got you now. I walked out of that house without looking back at Mom. She didn't try to stop me, didn't try to say goodbye. The last thing I heard as Uncle Robert closed the car door was Madison asking if she could have my new room too. The transition wasn't easy at first. I'd wake up in my new room at Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia's house, momentarily confused about where I was. But then I'd smell Aunt Patricia's coffee and bacon wafting up from the kitchen, and remember that I was home, my real home. The adoption process moved quickly. Mom signed away her rights without hesitation, which hurt at the time but eventually felt like a blessing. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia became Mom and Dad on paper, making official what was already true in my heart. Helen, Uncle Robert said one morning over breakfast, we enrolled you in Riverside Prep. It's a better school than your old one, and we think you'll like it there. I did like it there. Without the constant stress of my old home life, I started doing better in classes. My teachers noticed, and so did my new parents. They came to everything, every school play, every academic awards ceremony, every parent-teacher conference. When I joined the debate club, they sat through every competition, beaming with pride even when I lost. They encouraged me to try new things. Piano lessons, summer science camps, volunteering at the local animal shelter, they supported it all. Not just with money, but with genuine interest and involvement. The pain of my mother's rejection faded gradually, replaced by the warm certainty of being truly loved. I stopped thinking about her, stopped wondering if she ever thought about me. My new life was too full, too happy for those old hurts to matter anymore. High school graduation came, and I had the loudest cheering section in the audience, not just Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia, but their whole extended family who had embraced me as their own. We have something to tell you, Aunt Patricia said at my graduation dinner. We've been saving for your college fund since the day you came to live with us. They'd put aside enough to send me to any school I chose. I picked State University's business school, planning to major in investment management. College was incredible. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make them proud. During my junior year internship at Goldman Sachs, Aunt Patricia mentioned casually that she'd run into my birth mother at the grocery store. She has a son now, Aunt Patricia said carefully, watching my reaction. They're still in your father's old house with Richard's family. I just nodded, surprised to feel nothing but mild curiosity. That life seemed like a distant dream now, happening to someone else. After graduation, I landed a job at Morgan Stanley. My starting salary made my eyes pop. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making right out of college. The day I got my first paycheck, I went straight to the jewelry store. Uncle Robert had been wearing the same worn-out watch for years, and Aunt Patricia had been eyeing a particular pearl necklace in a local shop window. When I gave them their gifts, Aunt Patricia started crying, and Uncle Robert's hand shook as he put on his new watch. You shouldn't have spent your money on us, he protested weakly. Who else would I spend it on? I asked, hugging them both. You're my parents. You're the ones who made all of this possible. 6 years flew by after college. I climbed the corporate ladder at Morgan Stanley, earning promotion after promotion until I was managing my own team. Every success felt sweeter because I could share it with Mom and Dad, as I now called Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia without hesitation. The apartment came first, a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in a nice part of the city. Mom helped me decorate it, and Dad insisted on checking all the paperwork before I signed the mortgage. Then I met Michael. A year of dating, and he proposed during a weekend trip to the beach. I said yes, before he even finished asking the question. Mom cried when we told them, and Dad pulled Michael into a bear hug. "Welcome to the family, son," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. We threw ourselves into wedding planning. Mom and I spent weekends looking at venues and tasting cakes, while Dad and Michael bonded over budget spreadsheets and vendor contracts. Then the message arrived on Facebook. "Helen, sweetheart. I've heard about your upcoming wedding. I know it's been a long time, but I'm still your mother. I've changed, and I want to make things right. Please let me be part of your special day. I miss you so much." My hand shook as I read the message. I immediately called Mom. "I saw Sarah yesterday," Mom said quietly when I told her about the message. "At the grocery store. She didn't ask about you, not once. But when I mentioned how successful you've become, how you're getting married, well, her eyes lit up in a way I didn't like." Mom hesitated before continuing. "There's more. That niece of her husband's, Madison? She got pregnant, married some deadbeat, and moved back into the house with her husband. The whole family is constantly fighting. Sarah was complaining about money problems, rather loudly, in the middle of the store. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. So that's why she reached out. She needs money." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as memories flooded back, the room she gave away, the birthday she threw me away, the years of silence when she had every opportunity to reach out but didn't. Finally, I typed. "Sarah, let me be clear, you are not my mother. You lost that right when you gave me away on my 13th birthday. I have parents who love me unconditionally, something you never managed to do. I don't want you at my wedding. I don't want you in my life. Don't contact me again." I hit send, then immediately blocked her. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd finally put down a weight I didn't know I was carrying. The morning of my wedding dawned perfect and clear. Michael's parents had rented the Mason Creek estate for the ceremony, a beautiful historic property with sprawling gardens and a restored Victorian mansion. I was in the bridal suite with Mom, putting the finishing touches on my makeup, when there was a knock at the door. "Ms. Anderson?" One of the security guards looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's a situation at the front gate. There are some people insisting they know you, a man, woman, and teenage boy." My stomach dropped. Somehow, I knew exactly who it was. "I'll handle this," I said, standing up carefully in my wedding dress. "Helen, you don't have to," Mom started, but I shook my head. "Yes, I do. Once and for all." I walked to the front gates, my wedding heels clicking against the cobblestone path. And there they were, Sarah, Richard, and a boy who must have been my half-brother, though he looked exactly like Madison. "Helen!" Sarah screamed when she saw me, grabbing the iron bars of the gate. "How dare you not invite your own mother to your wedding? Let us in immediately." I took a moment to really look at her. She'd aged poorly, her designer clothes were obviously last season's, her makeup too heavy, her hair desperately in need of a touch-up. Richard looked thinner, more haggard, the expensive suit replaced by something off the rack. "Richard should be the one walking you down the aisle," Sarah continued, her voice shrill. "He's your father." That made me laugh, a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed across the courtyard. "My father? The man who locked me in a room for 2 days? The man who helped you throw away your own daughter? We're family," Sarah's voice cracked. "You can't just pretend we don't exist. Look at how you're living, this fancy wedding, your big job, your expensive clothes. Meanwhile, we can barely make ends meet. We're drowning in debt, and you're here playing princess." Ah, there it was. The real reason for this dramatic appearance. I'm not playing at anything, I said coldly. I worked for everything I have. And let's be clear, you're not my family. You gave up that right years ago. My parents are inside that house. They're the ones who raised me, supported me, loved me unconditionally. You need our help. Sarah was practically foaming at the mouth now. After everything we did for you. Everything you did for me? I cut her off. You mean throwing me away like garbage? Taking away my room, my home, my childhood? That's what you did for me. I turned to the security guards. These people are strangers who are trespassing. Please remove them from the property. They are not welcome here. You can't do this, Sarah screamed as the guards moved forward. I'm your mother. No, I said firmly. You're just the woman who gave birth to me. There's a difference. I turned my back on her continued screams and walked away, my head held high. When I returned to the bridal suite, Mom was waiting with a worried expression. Are you okay, sweetheart? I took a deep breath and smiled. You know what? I've never been better. That chapter of my life is finally, completely closed. There was a knock at the door, and Dad poked his head in. Ready, princess? I looked in the mirror one last time, adjusting my veil. The woman looking back at me wasn't that scared 13-year-old girl anymore. I was strong, successful, and loved, truly loved. I'm ready, I said, taking Dad's arm. The wedding march began to play as we approached the garden ceremony. I could see Michael waiting at the altar, beaming at me with tears in his eyes. Our guest stood, turning to watch as Dad walked me down the aisle. This was how it should be, the man who taught me to drive, who helped me with my college applications, who showed me what a father's love really means, was the one giving me away. The ceremony was perfect. Michael and I exchanged our vows under a blue sky, surrounded by flowers and the people who truly loved us. When he kissed me for the first time as my husband, our guests erupted in cheers. The reception lasted well into the night. Dad gave a touching speech that had everyone crying, then made everyone laugh with embarrassing stories from my college years. Mom danced with Michael while I danced with Dad, and I couldn't stop smiling. That was 6 months ago. Michael and I just got back from our honeymoon in Greece, and life has settled into a wonderful new normal. Sometimes people ask me about my real parents, and I tell them truthfully that my real parents are the ones who chose me, who loved me, who shaped me into the person I am today. I don't know what happened to Sarah and her family after the wedding, and honestly, I don't care. I heard through the grapevine that they had to sell Dad's old house, but that's not my concern anymore. That part of my life is over. My story isn't about being abandoned or betrayed. It's about finding your real family, the people who love you not because they have to, but because they want to. It's about choosing happiness over bitterness, forgiveness over anger, and moving forward instead of looking back. I'm Helen Anderson Mitchell now, and I couldn't be happier with the way things turned out. Every morning, I wake up next to a man who loves me completely, and every Sunday, we have dinner with the parents who chose me and never let me go. My name is Madison, and I came into this world as an afterthought, born to parents who were already in their 40s and had a 10-year-old daughter they considered more than enough. We didn't plan for you, my mother would often say, not maliciously, but matter-of-factly, as if stating the weather. If it wasn't for your grandparents' insistence. She'd trail off, leaving the rest unsaid, but the message was clear. I was here because my maternal grandparents had convinced my reluctant parents to have another child. They were overjoyed at the prospect of a second granddaughter, while my parents viewed me as an obligation they hadn't asked for. My sister, Sarah, was already deep into her own world of teenage concerns when I arrived. She wasn't cruel or mean, she simply acted as if I didn't exist. While I played with my dolls in the corner of our shared living room, she'd be sprawled on the couch, talking on the phone about boys and college applications, completely oblivious to my presence. Sarah, honey, don't forget your SAT prep books, Mom would say, carefully arranging them in her backpack. Meanwhile, I'd be sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for someone to notice I needed help with my homework. But help rarely came from my parents. Instead, they developed a routine that shaped my entire childhood. Every morning, they'd drop me off at my grandparents' house. "You wanted her," my father would say to my grandfather, keys jingling in his hand as he prepared to leave for work. "She's all yours." My grandparents' house became my real home. They picked me up from school, helped me with my homework, took me to the park, and made sure I was fed and cared for. Only late at night would my parents come to collect me, usually looking tired and slightly annoyed at having to make the trip. "Madison," my grandmother would say, hugging me goodbye each night, "you're the best thing that ever happened to us." And in those moments, wrapped in her warm embrace, I could almost forget that I wasn't wanted elsewhere. This pattern continued day after day, year after year. While my sister prepared for her bright future, I learned to navigate life as an afterthought in my own home. But my grandparents' love was constant, unwavering, and it was in their home that I learned what it meant to be truly valued. One day, my grandfather would tell me as we worked on my math homework, "You'll understand that sometimes the best things in life aren't planned." He'd wink at me, and for a moment, the weight of being unwanted would lift from my small shoulders. With Sarah away at college, I thought things might change at home. Maybe my parents would finally see me, the daughter who remained. I couldn't have been more wrong. "Madison," my mother's voice reached me before I could even drop my backpack after school. "The house needs cleaning. Start with the bathrooms." What had once been Sarah's chores now became mine, along with a host of new responsibilities. The washing machine became my constant companion, and I learned all its quirks and settings by heart. The housework seemed endless. "You live here, you need to contribute," my father would say whenever I showed the slightest hesitation. "Your sister always did her part." By the time I was 14, I had graduated from cleaning to cooking. It wasn't a gradual transition. One day, my mother simply stopped making dinner. "You're old enough now," she announced one morning. "We expect dinner ready when we get home from work." That first night, I made spaghetti. It was slightly overcooked, but edible. My parents ate in silence, then my father looked up from his plate. "Tomorrow, try something with chicken," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. My only escape was dreaming about college. Every night, after finishing the dishes, I'd retreat to my room and browse university websites. I'd imagine myself walking across different campuses, far away from the endless chores and cold silences. Then, when I was 16, Sarah came home with news that changed everything. She bounced through the front door one Sunday afternoon, dragging a tall, well-dressed man behind her. "Mom, Dad," she squealed. "This is James. We're engaged." You'd think someone had just announced they'd won the lottery. My parents literally jumped from their seats, my mother crying tears of joy. My father was already pulling out his phone to call relatives. "We'll pay for everything," my mother declared, hugging Sarah. "Our first daughter's wedding has to be perfect." The wedding preparations consumed our house for months. Every conversation revolved around flowers, venues, and guest lists. Money seemed to flow like water: designer dress, premium vendors, top-tier everything. My grandparents attended the wedding but seemed uncomfortable with the extravagance. I caught my grandmother frowning at the ice sculpture that probably cost more than a semester of college tuition. Grandfather just shook his head at the champagne fountain, but they kept their thoughts to themselves. 2 years later, I sat at our dinner table, 3 college acceptance letters spread before me. After years of playing Cinderella while maintaining straight A's, I'd been accepted to all my top choices. My heart raced as I told my parents the good news. "That's nice," my mother said, not looking up from her plate. "But we can't pay for it. We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding, even took out a loan for it. There's nothing left for college." "But, you paid for Sarah's college," I stammered. "That was different," my mother replied. "We saw potential in her." The silence at the dinner table was deafening after my mother's words about potential. I sat there, acceptance letters suddenly feeling heavy in my hands, as my parents continued eating as if they hadn't just shattered my dreams. "You should get a job," my father said between bites. "Save up some money, take out a student loan. That's what responsible adults do." I left the table without being excused, something I'd never dared to do before. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called my grandmother. Within minutes, I was walking through their familiar front door, tears streaming down my face. "Oh, sweetheart," my grandmother pulled me into a hug while I told them everything between sobs. My grandfather's face grew stern as he listened, but there was a glimmer in his eyes that I couldn't quite read. When I finished, they exchanged a knowing look. "Madison," my grandfather said, taking my hand, "we've been expecting something like this." "What do you mean?" "We've watched how they've treated you all these years," my grandmother explained, "how they spent money on Sarah's education, her wedding. We knew they might do this to you." My grandfather stood up and walked to his study. When he returned, he was holding a folder. "We've been saving for your education since the day you were born," he said, opening the folder to reveal bank statements. "You can choose any of those 3 colleges. We've got you covered." That night, I went home and packed my things. Not everything, just what I needed. My parents were watching TV downstairs and barely looked up when I told them I was moving in with my grandparents. "Whatever you think is best," my mother said, her eyes never leaving the screen. Was that relief I heard in her voice? The next few weeks were a blur of college preparations. I chose to study financial analysis. Somehow, watching my parents' mismanagement of money had sparked an interest in doing things the right way. My grandparents helped me with every detail, from filling out forms to buying supplies. When I finally started classes that fall, it felt like stepping into a new world. The material was challenging, but I loved every minute of it. Each class felt like a step away from my old life and toward something better. My professors noticed my enthusiasm, and soon I was staying after class to discuss complex financial concepts. For the first time in my life, someone besides my grandparents saw potential in me, real potential. My second year of college was in full swing when my grandmother called with some interesting news about Sarah. "Your sister's having trouble," she said during one of our weekly calls. "Her marketing career isn't taking off like she hoped, and James can't seem to hold down a job. They're constantly asking your parents for money." I wasn't surprised when she told me they were getting it. "Your mother emptied her retirement account last month to help them with rent," my grandmother sighed. "They just can't say no to her." A year later, the situation got worse. Sarah and James couldn't make rent anymore, even with our parents' help. They moved back into my old bedroom, the one I'd spent years keeping spotlessly clean. The irony wasn't lost on me. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My professors had helped me land internships at prestigious financial firms, where I discovered I had a real talent for solving complex financial puzzles. Each challenging project made me more certain I'd chosen the right path. "You've got a natural instinct for this," my supervisor at Morgan Stanley told me during my performance review. "We'd love to have you back next summer." I kept my head down and focused on my studies, barely thinking about my family except during calls with my grandparents. But when I visited them during my senior year, I knew something was wrong the moment I walked through their door. My grandmother's usual warm smile seemed forced, and my grandfather, usually quick with a joke, sat quietly in his armchair. The house felt heavy with unspoken words. "What's wrong?" I asked over dinner, watching them push food around their plates. "And don't tell me it's nothing. I know you both too well." They exchanged a look I'd seen too many times before, the one that meant they were trying to protect me from something. Finally, my grandfather spoke. "Your parents came to see us last week," he said, his voice unusually tired. "They wanted their inheritance early." "What do you mean?" I put down my fork. "They're in trouble with the banks," my grandmother explained. "Multiple loans, credit card debt. They said they needed $200,000 to avoid bankruptcy." "And you gave it to them?" I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. My grandfather nodded. "We had to, Madison. They're still our daughter and son-in-law, despite everything. It was most of our savings, but... Most of your savings? I was furious. After everything they've done? After how they keep enabling Sarah's irresponsible behavior? After how they treated me? Sweetheart, my grandmother reached across the table to take my hand. We know you're angry. But what's done is done. We'll be fine. But I kept getting angry. My parents, who'd never had money for my education, who'd treated me like a servant, had the audacity to demand money from the only people who'd ever truly cared for me. All because they couldn't say no to Sarah and couldn't manage their own finances. My hard work paid off after graduation. With glowing recommendations from my professors and impressive internship experiences, I landed a position at one of the top financial firms in the city. The starting salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of making. I found a modest one-bedroom apartment, nothing fancy but clean and safe. Every morning, I'd wake up grateful that I didn't have to cook breakfast for anyone but myself. My career flourished as I threw myself into each new challenge, earning promotions and bonuses that my younger self couldn't have imagined. Within a few years, I had enough saved for a down payment on my own place. The day I signed the mortgage papers, I couldn't help but think of my parents and Sarah, who'd never managed their money well enough to buy property. Not that they knew about my success, we hadn't spoken in years. Then came the call that changed everything. My grandfather had suffered a massive heart attack. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. My grandmother, who'd been by his side for over 50 years, seemed to lose her spark after that. Less than 2 months later, she followed him. I was arranging my grandmother's funeral when I heard a familiar voice behind me at the funeral home. Madison? Do you want some help with the arrangements? I turned to find my mother standing there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, but something in her expression made me hesitate. Sure, I heard myself say. That would be nice. Over the next few days, as we planned the service, my parents began to open up. They were struggling, they admitted. Retirement hadn't been kind to them financially. We barely make ends meet, my father confessed one afternoon while we were picking out flowers. And with Sarah's twins. Twins? This was news to me. Yes, 4-year-olds, my mother jumped in. Such beautiful boys, but they need so much. Sarah and James still can't manage on their own, so we help where we can. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Some things never changed. A week after we laid my grandmother to rest, we gathered in a wood-paneled office for the reading of the will. I sat across from my parents, with Sarah and James slouched in chairs beside them. The room smelled of old papers and furniture polish, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The notary, Mr. Patterson, adjusted his glasses and began reading in a monotone voice. I expected the usual legal jargon, but what came next made everyone sit up straight. To our beloved granddaughter, Madison, he read, "We leave our house at 1542 Maple Street and the sum of $150,000. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's mouth fell open, and my mother gripped my father's arm so hard her knuckles turned white. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat and continued, and a personal note from Mr. Henderson to his daughter, Margaret. He looked at my mother. The note reads, "Margaret, remember that we gave you $200,000 when you needed it most. This is our final decision, and we trust you will respect it as we respected your needs then." My mother's face flushed red, then pale. My father stared at the floor, while Sarah and James exchanged worried glances. After the notary finished and gathered his papers, my parents approached me in the parking lot. The confident demeanor they'd shown during the funeral arrangements was gone, replaced by something almost desperate. "Madison, honey," my mother began, her voice trembling, "you have to understand, we always thought we'd inherit the house. We were counting on it. We're struggling," my father added, running his hand through his gray hair. "The mortgage, Sarah's family's expenses, we could really use the house." I looked at them both, remembering all the years of neglect, the constant reminders that I wasn't wanted, the refusal to help with my education. No, I said firmly. The house is mine. That's what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. They continued pleading, following me to my car, but I stood firm. Sarah joined in too, talking about how her boys needed a yard to play in, but I simply got in my car and drove away. A week later, my phone rang. It was my mother, asking me to come over for dinner. Something in her voice sounded different, humbled, perhaps. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Pulling up to my childhood home was like stepping back in time, except everything looked shabbier than I remembered. The paint was peeling, the gutters sagged, and the once pristine lawn was patchy and overgrown. Inside, the house was crowded but clean. Sarah's twins, Tommy and Jake, ran circles around the living room while James half-heartedly told them to settle down. The boys were cute, they had Sarah's eyes and James's curly hair. Madison, my mother smiled, pulling me into an awkward hug. We made your favorite, pot roast. That's not my favorite, I said automatically. That's Sarah's favorite. An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by my father clearing his throat. Well, why don't you tell us what your favorite food is? We'd love to know. And surprisingly, they seemed genuinely interested. Over dinner, they asked about my job, my apartment, my hobbies. They actually listened when I talked about my work in finance, though I could tell most of it went over their heads. That dinner led to another, then another. Soon, I was joining them for holidays, bringing gifts for the twins, even helping Sarah with their homework sometimes. When they mentioned the house needed repairs, I found myself offering to help. I paid for a new roof, fixed the heating system, repainted the exterior. Each time I wrote a check, my parents would tear up with gratitude. You're too good to us, my mother would say, hugging me. We don't deserve this. You're right, I would think, but never say it aloud. Because despite everything, despite all the years of hurt and neglect, some small part of me still wanted to believe people could change. The years passed, and my career continued to flourish. Each promotion brought new opportunities, and my investment portfolio grew substantially. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents seemed to strengthen. They were getting older, both were over 70 now, and I found myself wanting to do something meaningful for them. I've been thinking, I said during one of our Sunday dinners, watching my father struggle up from his chair. This house isn't really suitable for you anymore. I want to buy you a new house. Something single-story, with a nice garden, but easier to maintain. Something that would be comfortable for your retirement years. Their reactions surprised me, actual tears of joy. We spent the next few weeks house hunting together, and finally found the perfect place, a beautiful ranch-style home in a quiet neighborhood, with wide doorways and no stairs. After closing my checkbook, my parents couldn't stop talking about how excited they were. We need to have a proper housewarming party, my father declared. Let us arrange everything. It's the least we can do. That would be lovely, I agreed, planning to present them with the deed during the celebration. Just let me know when. Weeks passed. I was busy with work, but I kept expecting an invitation. When nothing came, I started asking about the date. Oh, we're still planning, my mother would say. You know how these things take time. We want it to be perfect, my father would add. We'll let you know soon. Something about their vague responses niggled at me. One evening, after another deflecting phone call from my mother, I found myself typing Sarah's name into Facebook. I hadn't looked at her profile in years, we weren't connected on any social media. There it was, posted just hours ago, so excited for Mom and Dad's housewarming party this Saturday. The new house is gorgeous, can't wait to celebrate with everyone. The post had dozens of comments from relatives and friends, all confirming their attendance. Photos showed decorations being set up, caterers being booked. This wasn't a last-minute gathering, this had been planned for weeks. My hands shaking slightly, I called my mother. Hi Mom, I kept my voice casual. Just checking in about the housewarming party. Have you set a date yet? Oh honey, not yet, she replied smoothly. Probably in a couple of weeks. We're still working out the details. We want everyone to be able to come. Everyone except me, apparently. That Saturday, I parked my car a block away from the house I'd bought. Music and laughter drifted through the evening air. Through the large front windows, I could see dozens of people milling about, relatives I recognized, friends of my parents, Sarah's social circle. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. They were expecting everyone except the person who actually owned the house. I slipped in quietly, following the sound of my father's voice, to the living room. And after all these years of hard work, we finally did it, he was saying to a group of attentive listeners. Bought our dream home. Don't forget about Sarah, my mother added proudly. She helped so much with the down payment. Such a wonderful daughter. Always taking care of her parents, someone commented. Unlike some people, my mother said pointedly. You know, our younger daughter hasn't helped us at all. Probably too busy with her career to care about family. I stood in the doorway, heat rising to my face as I watched this performance. Sarah beamed beside them, her 7-year-old twins running between the guests in the house I'd bought. Actually, I said loudly, making everyone jump, I think you've got that backwards. The color drained from my parents' faces. Guests turned to stare at me, whispers rippling through the crowd. Madison, my father recovered first, his smile tight. What a surprise. I'm sure it is, I replied, stepping into the room. Especially since you forgot to invite me to the housewarming party for the house I bought. Dead silence fell over the room. Sarah's husband suddenly became very interested in his shoes. Well, my mother's voice had an edge to it, what's done is done. You bought it, yes, but it's ours now. You can't expect eternal gratitude. That's right, my father added, gaining confidence. And frankly, you're not welcome here. This is a family gathering. And Sarah and her family will be living here too, my mother announced. They've already sold their house. It's all arranged. I couldn't help but laugh, a cold, harsh sound that made several guests step back. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a folder. You seem to be confused about something, I said, opening the folder to reveal the deed and ownership papers. This house belongs to me. I never signed it over to you. I was planning to give it to you tonight, at what I thought would be a proper housewarming party. My mother's face went from pale to ashen. My father started to sputter. And now? I turned to address the stunned guests. Now, I'd like everyone to leave. This is my house, and the party's over. You can't do this, my mother's voice rose to a shriek. We're your parents. No, I said quietly. You're just the people who gave birth to me. My real parents, my grandparents, taught me that family means more than blood. They also taught me about finances, which is why I own this house and you don't. They left in tears, my parents, Sarah, James, the twins, and all their guests. I watched from the front porch as they drove away, one by one, until the street was empty. After a few weeks, I learned they'd used the money from selling their own house to buy an apartment. Sarah, James, and the twins moved in with them. They tried calling me for weeks, but I blocked their numbers, their emails, their social media accounts. The house? I sold it a month later and put the money in my account. Someday, I'll have my own children, and I promised myself they'll never have to earn my love or compete for my attention. Unlike my parents, I'll love my children equally and unconditionally, the way my grandparents loved me.